The Windsors. Continuity and change.
And the Queen, I think, having looked to see if the planes are in sight. Prince William seems to think he's seen them. I'm certain Prince Harry has.
But perhaps not this much.
And a huge roar, a huge cheer from the crowd.
By stepping down, but staying royal, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are trying to create a unique perch. It's not clear how steady they'll find it.
I think it's really difficult to propose to be half in and half out of the royal family. It is a team, and you are either a full member of the team, or I think you have to leave the team entirely.
It is this point which will cause most consternation. They claim on their new website that they wish to be financially independent, and yet much of their income comes from Harry's father's Duchy of Cornwall estate. Other royals like Edward and Sophie of Wessex have tried to step back, make their own money, only to be accused of cashing in. But the echoes of this unusual episode for the palace likely go back much further.
You must believe me when I tell you that I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility and to discharge my duties as king as I would wish to do.
It is Harry's great-great-uncle, Edward VIII, who most recently set up an unofficial rival court, a subject of endless intrigue. He, like Harry, a Windsor who wanted to do things differently.
I think it's inevitable that the example of Edward VIII might come to mind because he spent the rest of his life in exile. Harry and Meghan have announced that they might spend a large part of their time in Canada. I don't think they would set up anything resembling a court in exile. The Duke of Windsor, as Edward VIII became, cut a rather pathetic figure in subsequent years after he left the throne. And I think the concern of the Queen and other members of the royal family may potentially be one of anxiety and sorrow, lest Harry and Meghan find too that they've made the wrong choice. They find that they are dispensable.
There is little in the way of constitutional significance to this move. Harry is far removed from the throne. The Queen is apparently keen to find a solution which works for the couple. And perhaps it is an idea with which we and the royals should be more comfortable. It would be the norm in other European monarchies.
In each generation, in effect, the royal family does need to slim down, otherwise it would just grow larger and larger. So only 2 months ago, the King of Sweden removed 5 of his grandchildren, still quite young children, from the royal family, and continuously other families have done the same. A core team in the smaller European royal families will consist of just 4 people, the King and Queen and the Crown Prince and Princess. And that's the case, for example, in a country like Norway or Spain.
Yet it was Harry and Meghan who were supposed to be the modernisation, to be the change.
It's really sad, and I think that it was a really beautiful and positive image to see the royal family, you know, something that is associated with, to me, slightly absurd aristocratic deferential traditions, changing and welcoming and becoming a bit more like a portrait of modern Britain and modern families.
Prince Harry was never likely to join his ancestors in being crowned here. The truth, a truth he must surely know. He is destined for the ranks of minor royalty. The Andrew, the Anne, the Edward of his day. As the stars of his niece and nephews rise, his will likely fall alongside them. But this unlikely divide has shown up, the cultural divides that are shaping modern Britain, questions which go far beyond the succession.
If you look at the Remain-Leave divide, right, however you want to divide that up, there's a whole load of issues which you can say fall very clearly on one side or another of that. So, do you eat quinoa? Do you recycle? Do you support the death penalty? These have become a kind of constellation of unrelated issues that nonetheless fall into a kind of tick, 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 down one side or another. And I would say whether or not you're on the Harry and Meghan side or the William and Kate side, also kind of really falls into that divide as well. What's your idea of monarchy? Should they be sort of silent and waving, or are they allowed to have opinions about feminism and racism and all the rest of it?
Some may huff and puff, say, who cares? But in a bitter culture war, in Brexit-bruised Britain, the monarchy has emerged as one of the last bonds between countries and peoples of an increasingly disparate kingdom. As thoughts turn to the next decade and beyond, as a queen will become a king, two people who were supposed to renew this ancient institution could yet prove the thorn in its side.
Lewis Goodall will joining me now to discuss the future of the monarchy. We have the royal historian Kate Williams, the singer and broadcaster Jamelia, the Queen's biographer Robert Lacey, and from Spiked Online, Fraser Myers. But first, our political editor, Nick Watt, is here. Nick, how seriously is this being seen by ministers?
Well, publicly, Downing Street are absolutely keeping out of this, but the mood was summed up by one member of the Cabinet who said to me, it's unwise for politicians to get involved in royalty, but this is obviously very big. There's also, I think, dismay in Cabinet at the nature of the announcement by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. One member of the Cabinet said to me the execution had been done very, very poorly. Another minister said that this highlights two major problems. One is the problem of a monarchy in transition, and the second problem is the fallout from Prince Andrew's interview with Newsnight, which means that any difficulties are, in the words of this minister, massively amplified. Now, as for the Sussexes, one member of the Cabinet said to me, if they go ahead with this, they cannot benefit from any public funds, so they were pleased to see that they appear to be opting out of the civil list. There will be a problem over their main UK residence, Frogmore Cottage, because that was refurbished at taxpayers' expense. But as for this issue of police protection, the view there is that is absolutely a matter for the police to make an assessment, should not be linked to this.
So, any sense of where it will go from here as far as the government's concerned? I mean, does the government have any locus on this, any conversation?
Well, there is the Golden Triangle, which is the Queen's private secretary, the Cabinet secretary and the Prime Minister's main private secretary. They're the guys who sort of monitor this sort of stuff. So publicly, we don't know what's going on, but I'm sure that those phones will be ringing. I think the view in Cabinet is that this is going to be a painful process, but maybe it could accelerate those reforms to what Lewis Goodall was talking about there, which is a slimmed-down monarchy, which is the core of the Queen and her immediate successors and any other royals who genuinely want to take part. But listen to this from a member of the Cabinet. If Harry and Meghan don't want to be part of this, that's fine. But there's a contract between the British people and the royal family, and so there will be consequences.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, listen, let's open this all up now. First of all, is it possible to be a hybrid royal, especially if there is going to be this slimmed-down monarchy, Kate?
Well, this is taking a contrary view because I know a lot of people have been saying it's not possible. To me, it is completely possible to be a hybrid royal. And simply the fact is that we've never tried it before. The reason why Edward VIII was not a hybrid royal, because he was in disgrace, he was exiled, because he wanted to be
But how do you decide when you're royal and when you're not? I mean, you can't be in the royal box, can you, really?
Well, I think what's going to happen is that my prediction is they're going to go and set up their own charitable foundation, a bit like the Gates Foundation or these big charitable foundations, and they will do work for that. But what I think they'll do for the Queen is particularly the Commonwealth work, the travelling. So some part of the year they'll be working for the Queen, some part they won't. And things like Frogmore Cottage, my presumption is they'll pay, as other royals do, a rental income to the Queen for that cottage because it is her property. So I can see it working out. I really think it's very possible. A lot of discussion, but I think it actually could be quite an exciting move for the royal family.
Fraser Myers, from your point of view, can you see this kind of, semi-detached royals?
Well, I think, the monarchy has survived much worse. It's survived the advent of universal suffrage. It's survived the end of the age of deference. And we've been moving to this kind of situation for a long time where the primary way that the monarchy is sustained is through celebrity. That is kind of why the royal family lingers on. It's less to do with tradition and deference these days than it is to do with celebrity.
It's not lingering on, is it? I mean, whatever we're talking about here, we're talking about something that goes to the heart of how Britain feels about itself, and the fact that the Prime Minister and the Cabinet are talking about it is not about a lingering institution. It's about a challenged institution.
However, at the moment it's an Elizabethan institution, and we can come on and talk about what happens beyond that. It's a very particular time. We've had a monarch who's given more than 70 years service. This has been a very particular time. I wonder if there's two things that might happen here. Neither of them necessarily good for the monarchy, which is if Meghan and Harry succeed in setting up what a source called me a kind of supercharged Clooney's,
Supercharged?
Clooney's and see themselves as very... Well, George and Amal Clooney,
oh,
they do love
see.
it. See them like that.
American celebrities.
Exactly, and it works. Will it make the rest of the monarchy look very stuffy? On the other hand, if they do start to do trading, will it look tacky? I mean, where do you go with this?
Well, trading is certainly a big issue. You're talking about how they're going to make their money, and the fact that this summer, didn't they? They trademarked the name Sussex Royal, attached to a whole list of things from T-shirts to bandanas. Now, as we were talking about before the programme, that could well be in a charitable context. And I just agree with Kate here. All sorts of new possibilities are opening up.
Is it a positive move, do you think, Jamelia?
I think all change is positive, and I think we have to, as a society, be more open to change. OK, it looks different. OK, you know, this hasn't been done before. OK, this is unprecedented. But does that mean that it's not a positive thing? Absolutely not. This is, I think this is fantastic, and I think it holds a huge mirror up to society and what's wrong with the monarchy as it is.
I agree, because I think that society is changing so rapidly.
Absolutely.
And simply, the Queen, she sacrificed her life for everything for the royal family, and younger people they're saying they don't want the same things. We live in a different world. So I think, and we've seen the avalanche of sympathy of young people for what Harry and Meghan are doing, saying yes, they should forge their own way.
Do you think there's a danger
and it'd be good?
Do you think that actually the duty is not there anymore, but the privilege is?
I think that's exactly what is missing from the modern monarchy, particularly from Meghan and Harry in particular. They are obviously not in it for the long haul. There's not there used to be the expectation that you would commit yourself to public service for life.
The thing is there's a possibility of a different model, and I wonder if the model of the actual monarchy, because one of the key things we understand from Meghan Markle was she actually, I don't think, realised just how little agency or control she would have over her own life.
And I think again, as a society, we need to separate the duty and traditionalism that we're speaking about when we're speaking about this situation in particular, because this is not normal. This is the first person of colour that has entered the British royal family, especially as such a senior royal, and I think that we cannot speak about this as if it's just another person who's entered the royal family. The treatment that both Meghan and Harry have received is completely different to anyone who has been in this royal family.
And we're going to talk at some length about the press, but before we go do that, the idea that Prince Charles was already working on this idea of a slimmed-down monarchy. Now, clearly one of the two poles of that was obviously the Cambridges, but was the Sussexes. Without the Sussexes doing that level of work, you talk about the Commonwealth, but without that, what is going to happen? Because the Cambridges presumably can't take any more of the slack up.
But you're assuming that they're walking away completely.
No,
that is not what they're...
We know Meghan has gone to Canada tonight. I'm not saying she's there forever, but I know that her son is there. But there is no doubt that she will want to spend a lot of time away from the UK. That is clear.
Yes.
Wouldn't
well,
you?
Then let's not forget... let's not forget that Britain is at the centre of a Commonwealth of, 47 nations. They seem to be talking about going to live in Canada, which is actually a monarchy in its own right. And I take them at their word. They want they don't want to be non-royal. They do not want to be semi-detached royal. They want to be a new sort of royal, and I think that could work.
And I agree, and I think Canada isn't that far away. They can move between countries. Many people do, and I think that what we'll see, I think they will be more global ambassadors moving around the world, and we saw them even talking about that in the engagement interview. Harry's always wanted more than the royal family can give, and this reflects that.
But do you think that the royal family, as constituted just now, is prepared to cede control? Because that, it is a firm, it is a business, it is incredibly tightly controlled, and that is, as I said, part of the problem.
I think it has to, and I think we've seen a change in the attitude. We saw that quite terse statement come out last night.
Yeah. Well, that was the first instinct.
Yes, a very terse statement, and then we saw briefings today about disappointments, and now we understand there are these important talks going on because they can't lose
them. The disappointments are not about the proposal. The proposal was made more than a week ago, and the discussions were started. The disappointment was not about what they were offering. The family was talking about it. The disappointment was, understandably, the premature revelation.
But they were bounced into it by the news.
Yes,
they were. I agree.
Absolutely. And the thing is, what it has to be is what would constitute, in your view, a modern monarchy?
Well, I think the modern monarchy is a contradiction in terms, and I think that's one of the most fascinating things about this statement is to talk about a new progressive role for the monarchy. We talked about it's an ancient institution. It grates against many of our modern beliefs in equality and democracy. So I don't think there is such a thing as a modern monarchy.
In a question of actually even how they live, the idea would be, we know that Prince Charles has no love for Buckingham Palace, that they need to change the way they live and actually just offload that as some kind of conference centre and live more modestly.
Yeah.
Would that make a difference?
Of course it would make a difference, of course, and I think that in more ways than one, both Meghan and Harry have communicated not only to us but to those around them that they are uncomfortable living in the way that they do, and they're well within their rights to do so.
So let's come on now and talk about privilege
Yes.
and intrusion and duty. And we know the scrutiny that Meghan Markle has had. And we know that she was very unhappy with the press with the treatment of her father. You know, it was like grooming him to...
Absolutely.
What do you think characterises the way the press has dealt with her?
I think even watching the report that I just watched, it was kind of like no one's mentioning the elephant in the room. Every single word that is used against Meghan Markle is steeped in racism. And if we are unable to speak about it and be honest about it, then we're never going to move forward. And that is what is the driving force behind a lot of the scrutiny.
I agree with you about this in one sense. The social media discussion of Meghan Markle is shamefully racist.
And you don't
but when
think
you look at the newspapers, they're sensationalist, they're vulgar. I don't see racism there.
But you don't necessarily see overt racism, but you see something different.
But this is the thing, overt racism is very different to covert racism, and this is exactly what that is. Take it from someone who has been the victim of covert racism, and it pales in comparison to what I've seen happen to Meghan Markle.
And you're saying it's not just social media, it's the way the different stories are treated.
And it's not just social media with Meghan Markle or Harry, it's not. It's mainstream media, tabloid media.
I'd like to see the evidence of that.
Do you think the mainstream media has to take responsibility?
I think we see a difference. What I've seen is that when Meghan edits a magazine, all chaos breaks loose. When the other royals did it, it was fine. When Meghan wears a strapless gown, a trivial matter.
Or a single shoulder gown.
I mean, you know, the Queen Mother wore that kind of thing, that noted radical. So what we see over and over again is what Meghan eating avocados seem to be some kind of disaster.
Are they actually too woke? Do you think
I think they are. I think you know, the wokeness of the royals rubs people up the wrong way, especially when it's hypocritical in terms of, you know, Prince Harry lecturing people about being environmentally friendly and getting on his private jet to go on holiday. But I also think it's not fair to say that, you know, Meghan is singled out, because all of the, you know, princesses, especially the ones that have married in, have all faced real criticism.
To this level,
I mean,
can you honestly say to this level?
Diana was chased
she only
down by
became the
cats.
people's princess after she died. You know, if you think about the way, you know, Kate didn't say much, so there wasn't really much for her to go on. But they did scrutinise her body. They did, you know, take pictures of her breasts and all those things.
This is the worst.
You know, think about Sarah Ferguson. No one has ever said a nice word about Sarah Ferguson. She was called the Duchess of Pork.
But as we draw this to a close, what do you think this whole conundrum says about Britain just now?
Well, on this racism point, Britain is... But the racism is all over the world. There are dreadful racist societies, and as they
Britain
compare,
is one of them.
We are not so bad as others. I get very proud when our football
I'm sorry, I cannot possibly accept
not so bad
that.
as others,
that's terrible. That's a terrible way to think. As far as I'm concerned, we do live in a racist society. We have to acknowledge it, and we have to be able to speak about it. Can I just mention also, most of the people who are getting to speak about this are old white men, and
Thank you very much.
No, but I'm just saying. But
another generation.
Well, where are all of the women of colour who are able to speak from experience? Like, what qualifies you to speak so confidently about
you're able
this?
to shut down actually quite legitimate criticism of the royals. People are on the taxpayer dime
to be fair,
by
and it's
saying
not
that
being
it's
fair.
racist. And we're using the word racist to actually defend some of the most powerful and privileged people in the world.
Does your boss own you because he pays your wages? Does your boss own you?
Can I just move on just for one final question to Kate here? you know, the Queen has always said she would never abdicate. Is there a way that this is moved forward by the Queen stepping further back and for her son to take on more kingly duties? Is this a time to make that radical change?
Well, the Queen is not going to abdicate before 2022,
No.
the Platinum Jubilee.
No.
Let's face it, when she abdicates, she'll be Duchess of Edinburgh and have to curtsy to everyone. She doesn't. Who would want that?
I think that's rather a trivial way of putting it.
But essentially, and I was joking, but essentially, we're not going to see the Queen abdicating, but we are going. She is stepping back from more of the duties, and Charles is taking over. And this is what I think we also see. This happened in this matter. That certainly the debate was between Charles and Harry, and now the Queen has stepped in and said, sort it out. But I think historians of the future, 100, 200 years in the future, are going to look back on this moment and see it as a seismic moment for the royal family, but also for British society, because Meghan has been chased out.
And I don't agree, and I think it's a very positive moment, both for the monarchy and for society, that we're going to see change, and change for the good.
Thank you all very much indeed.